everyone and welcome back to School-O-Sophy. So last week we spoke about diffusion and today I'm going to speak about the structure of an atom. So let's get started. To understand the structure of an atom, we need to first understand what is an atom. So the earliest people thought about what the substances around them were made up of, and then came a Greek philosopher known as Thales. He observed the substances around him and said that all the substances were made out of elements. Further, he saw that water changed from solid to liquid to gas, that is from ice to water vapor, and he thought that all the substances were made out of the element water. However, the other Greek philosophers disagreed to it, and in the end, they came up with the fact that there are four main elements out of which all the substances were made up of. And the four main elements were water, air, fire and earth. Now they gave each element its own properties. Like for water, it was wet and cold, for air, wet and hot, for fire, hot and dry, and for earth, cold and dry. However, later came the Greek philosopher Democritus, and he said that this theory was wrong. He thought that if you take a solid piece, then divide it into half, and then again divide it into half, there would eventually come a tiny piece which will not be able to divide into half, and he named this as an atom. Now, atom means indivisible. Therefore, we get this term atom. So, atom is the smallest unit out of which all the substances are made up of. Later, the studies shown that atoms are also made up of subatomic particles. So, this is how the basic structure of an atom looks like. I know I have not drawn that well, so I am sorry, but now let's start. So this is what is the nucleus. The center of mass, that is the mass of the whole atom, is concentrated here. The mass of a neutron and a proton are equal. So the mass of this proton and a neutron are equal. Now this nucleus contains the protons and the neutrons. Now the red symbolizes a proton and the blue symbolizes a neutron. Now the proton has a positive charge, while the neutron has no charge. So it is neutral, while the proton has a positive charge. So around this nucleus, there are orbiting electrons. Now these electrons do not just orbit at random. They have shells. Now the shells contain the electrons, and at a particular distance from the nucleus, there are the shells. So these are the two shells, and there is empty space between the shells and the nucleus. So between this first shell and the nucleus, there is this empty space, and between the first and the second shell there is this empty space. Now electrons have a negative charge. Now electrons have a negative charge, protons have a positive charge, and neutrons have no charge. The number of protons are always equal to the number of electrons. Because it has 4 positive and 4 negative, so it becomes no charge, and the neutrons as it is have no charge. So the basic atom is neutrally charged. Now you would think that why didn't this 2 come in this shell? Why do they need a different shell? So for this, you basically need to know that each shell has a capacity in which it can contain the electrons, and this is given by the formula 2n square. So now let's find out the capacity of each shell. Here n is the number of shell, like whether it is the first shell or the second shell after the nucleus. So the capacity of the first shell would be 2 into 1 square, which is nothing but 2 into 1, which is 2. So only 2 electrons can fit in the first shell. Now for the second shell, it will be equal to 2 into 2 square, that is 2 into 4, which is 8. So the second shell can hold up to 8 electrons. That is why in the atom, if there is more than 2 electrons, then the electrons will be pushed to the next shell. Like here the capacity is 8 and first is 2. So even if an atom has more than 10 electrons, so in the first shell there will be 2 electrons, in the second shell 8 electrons, and the rest which are left will be pushed into the third shell. So the capacity for the third shell is 18 electrons and so on. So a shell can only hold electrons till its capacity. Like for the first shell 2 electrons, second shell 8 electrons, and third shell 18 electrons. Now this is just a basic rough and very bad drawing of 3 different carbon atoms. Now, as you can see, these are 3 different atoms, but they are of the same element, which is carbon. Now, each of them has 6 protons in its nucleus. Each atom has 6 protons in its nucleus and therefore 6 electrons orbiting outside the nucleus. But in the first carbon atom, there are 6 neutrons in the nucleus. While in the second carbon atom, there are 7 neutrons in this nucleus. 1% of carbon atoms have 7 neutrons in their nucleus, and even more smaller amounts have 8 neutrons in their nucleus. But most of the carbon atoms have 6 neutrons in their nucleus. So now, atoms of the same element with the same number of protons and the same number of electrons, but with different number of neutrons, are known as isotopes. So that's it for this video. I hope you understood. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments down below. And if you want me to post a video on any topic, please put it down in the comments. So bye bye, and please do subscribe.